I am posting this from a throwaway account like everyone does because I don't want my husband or any of our friends, family members to read this. I will also obviously be changing all the details pertaining to name, place, work, etc., so that I don't give away more than intended. I am a saleswoman and I do very well for myself. My husband and I have been married for 2 years now and together for almost 6. This is my first marriage and my husband's second. He has an 8-year-old daughter from his previous relationship and has always had complete custody of her. Due to Margaret around all the time, our dating life was not very smooth with him being a full-time single dad and also working for long hours, but we made it work. So I met his daughter when she was 4. This was after we had been dating for a year. I adored her very much and have always done my best to be a good stepmother to her. She calls me mom, and I have indeed done all the mom things for her that you could think of. I've helped her get dressed and ready for school, done her hair the way she asked me to, cooked her favorite meals, helped with her homework and soccer practice, took her out for ice cream dates, tucked her into bed, read her stories, etc. I am not perfect, and I have made mistakes too, but overall we have been a very happy family. Touch wood. So when my husband and I got engaged, he asked if I would like to be a stay-at-home mom for Margaret and any future children that we would have. At that time, I had politely declined as I was at the peak of my career, loved going to work, and the thought of being home all day with a kid and doing nothing but housework and typing some things didn't really fancy me. My husband, who was my fiancé then, was gracious, and we both assumed that was how it would be for any future children we had. Fast forward to the present scenario, where I am 6 months pregnant with our son. I am on cloud 9. I am in a permanent state of bliss. Something in me has changed in these past few months. I guess I want to be a stay-at-home mom now. Suddenly, it doesn't seem so bad. I am already in love with my unborn son, and I wish to spend as much time with him as possible. I don't want to miss any moment and surely want to record all this first so that they will be frozen in time and can be rewatched as and when we like. I know raising a little one wouldn't be all rosy and dreamy that it appears to be. There is actually a lot of poop, drool, screaming, and sleepless nights involved, but I can't really stand the thought of having 2 months of maternity leave and then hand over my son to some stranger in daycare. I have been thinking about this for months because I wanted to make sure this was something I really wanted and not just daydreaming about how easy and fun it was going to be. I spoke to my supervisor, who was a bit skeptical about me taking this decision, and he advised me to weigh the pros and cons before I made a final decision. The thing is, I am at that point in my career where I can work from home full-time and stay with my son and pick Margaret from school. I certainly don't mind watching over her, and the best part is that I would be able to spend more quality time with her as well. She could also bond much better with her sibling if I was around. So after I put little Margaret to bed that night, I asked my husband if he was free to talk and excitedly shared my views with him. His reaction to my ideas was something that I was not prepared for. He was furious beyond anything, and he started to yell at me. He said that we had agreed I would not be a SAHM before we got married, and it was so selfish of me to change that decision now. He accused me of being a bad stepmother and said that I would love my son more than Margaret. He felt that the favoritism I was projecting even before our son was born was disgusting, and he said that our son should not be allowed to have me around full-time if his daughter didn't. Margaret is very excited about her little brother and can't wait for his arrival. She has never expressed any kind of anxiety, sadness, or jealousy towards him or for me. You could say that I have never given a chance to complain as a parent. I was naturally very hurt by this. I was too shocked to say much, and he left the room with his pillow and blanket while I was in our room, crying of course. I was so very hurt by what he said. I know I am not perfect, but it was unfair how he ignored everything that I do and have been doing for Margaret. I didn't think I would change my mind later when I had a biological child, but now I really want to be a SAHM. I wouldn't have to quit my job either, and I can spend time with both the children. Double whammy, I am frankly angry at my husband for accusing me of all those things. He sees me as a typical and mean stepmother now, which I am clearly not. I do not love my son more than Margaret. I love Margaret, but I have a naturally deeper connection to this baby inside me, and I feel that is due to the fact that I am going through this whole experience of pregnancy for the first time ever. This baby is going to be half me. It doesn't mean I love Margaret any less. It's just different, you know. What do you guys think? Is it wrong that I am deciding to do this for both the kids and myself? Am I a bad stepmother because of this sole decision? Don't you guys feel this would be best, and it might even be a chance for us to grow closer and bond over the baby? Honestly, I don't know what to say to my husband anymore. I tried reasoning with him and stated everything that I have written here, but all he did was yell louder at me and said more awful things about my parenting each time he opened his mouth to respond to me. I'm pretty crushed by his behavior, and I am mad at him for all those nasty accusations, which are baseless. Margaret and I get along so well with each other, and we both feel we share a good mom-daughter relationship. The only person who seems to have a problem here is my husband. Thank you all for the kind and supportive messages on the last post. They surely helped me, and the suggestions as to why my husband suddenly blew up at me during our discussion gave me a better perspective on this whole thing. Now I am going to address some of the questions that you all have asked me in the last post. So at the time when my husband asked me to be a stay-at-home mom, we were just engaged and I was not at a secure place in my career and definitely wouldn't be allowed to work from home. I would have had to quit my job back then, which I clearly didn't want to. That too, to be the sole caregiver to a child that I didn't give birth to and who was born to the man I wasn't married to yet. I would be completely dependent on him financially, and I wasn't willing to put myself in such a vulnerable position. You would think I had been pretty calculative back then and played smart, but tell me something, isn't accepting a man with a child a huge task in itself? I know I would have been frustrated and not given my relationship with Margaret a fair chance if I had to drop my job and look after his house and kid all of a sudden. I didn't want to make that many life-altering changes to my life and be a convenience to someone, give or take. Do you guys know that even after we were married, I worked my ass off to get to the place where I am, and I don't have to quit my job anymore to be at home with the kids? Anyway, I think I have explained myself enough, and I don't need any more validation, so I will just carry on with the update. Coming to all those who said that I couldn't expect to work full-time and also look after an infant as well as a grammar school girl, you are absolutely right. Maybe I didn't give you all the complete details or gave the wrong idea, but I would not be working full-time for an uncertain period. I would definitely be working part-time. Yeah, my supervisor is 100% fine with that. I would have 2 months of maternity leave and then resume work from home, part-time. I will obviously be paid less than what I was earlier, but my company is great and is letting me reap full benefits despite being a part-time employee. My husband won't be worried about finances, and even if I quit, he makes enough money to support all of us and saves him every month, so it's quite comfortable just on his salary alone. I don't like the comfort. I love working too much to quit completely. My son is definitely a priority for me. A lot of you are curious about Margaret's real mom. Well, she is in the picture too, but just barely. She has borderline personality disorder, drinks like a fish, and is basically an irresponsible party animal. She sees Margaret maybe 1 weekend a month. That is if she isn't too stoned or hungover to make the effort. The only good thing I can say about her is that she makes child support payments on time, even though they are very little. Margaret doesn't prefer meeting her that much, and she has made it clear that it's me who's her biological mother. You get the picture? Anyway, I can't blame her, poor dear. So I went to bed that night very angry after crying my eyes out because I love Margaret. I have been a great mom to her. The next couple of days after that night were very quiet. I was distant but polite to my husband, but still warm and cuddly towards Margaret. I didn't really want anything to do with him. He started picking on every little thing that I routinely did for Margaret and in general around the house. He started saying things like, "Why are you even bothering? That's not how it should be done. And I'll bet that makes you feel just great." I had had enough, and after I put Margaret to bed one night, I told my husband that I was sick of his nasty attitude and he was setting a toxic environment for his own daughter. If he had anything to say, he should say it. He started yelling and screaming again, and I also lost it this time. He told me that I was being deeply selfish and wanting to give the best to my son, but not his daughter. I gave him a befitting reply this time and told him that I didn't need any award for doing whatever I had done for Margaret all these years, and changing my mind about becoming a SAHM was a very personal choice and he couldn't question it, no matter what. He couldn't expect all those things out of me just because Margaret had a poor start at life. Him comparing the two things was like saying my son was not his son at all after all. He kept on saying your son and my daughter in each argument. He then said something very authoritative and negative. He said he wouldn't allow me to be a stay-at-home mom this time for my son, and that was final. He ordered me to go to work as soon as my maternity leave was over. I was not taking orders from him. I sure love them a lot, but I was my own person first and foremost, and I wasn't working so hard all these years to take orders from a man who wanted to navigate my life as per his whims and fancies. I told him I was leaving. I was tired of all this back and forth arguments, which could have been a calm and mature discussion with reasonable inputs from his side, as well as to how we would go through the first few months with the baby and Margaret together. It was supposed to be a family decision, not a power play of your child is my child. I thought of suggesting couple counseling, but I knew that would start another argument, so I didn't. He started crying, but I was so mad at him, I didn't even say goodbye. Quickly packed what I needed, and my mom picked me up. I regret discussing my thoughts with him altogether now. We went NC after that for a couple of days. Yesterday, he started texting and calling me and stated that Margaret had been crying a lot and asking for him. I don't think he would ill-treat her in my absence, but I made sure and spoke to her on the phone. She asked me when I was coming back and why I left so suddenly. I didn't know what to say, so I just assured her that I loved her a lot. I called my husband and asked him to stop using Margaret as a pawn to manipulate me in any way. He again started about the bad step-parent thing, but I shut him up by saying that I was so bad, why did he want me back? I asked him to strictly leave Margaret out of this mess and speak to me only when he was ready for counseling. I am ready to file for divorce if he doesn't pull his act together soon. He texted me today that he misses me and wants me back in his life. I don't know where to go from here. I'm still trying to process how my life was jumbled within seconds. It's been about 10 weeks since the last update. I just wanted to give you all a brief update before I deliver my baby. I am about to pop anytime. My brother-in-law and husband's best friend visited him and interrogated him as to what he was up to and why I was all alone when he should be by my side and take extra care of me at this point of my pregnancy. He told them all about our conversations and fights, and also that he still felt I was unfair. They bashed him and put sense into him. They told him he was ruining his and Margaret's life with his own hands and that I was much better than he deserved. Husband started texting me again and made excuses about Margaret. I told him that I didn't want to be a nanny to his child. I wanted a family with him of which Margaret was always a part of. I didn't want to raise my son in a toxic environment with him and asked him to get some treatment towards his mental health. We tried it for a couple of months while I was looking after my son alone. It didn't work out. Things got even worse. I am not willing to go for divorce yet. Hence, legal separation was the best bet. He has proved that his outburst was not a one-time thing, and he has a lot of issues which he needs to deal with. Margaret took this separation hard on herself and is in a mess. All in all, a very sad and uncertain update, but I don't even have the energy to write what comes next for us. I feel guilty about Margaret, and I love her so much, but I can't put my son in this equation in order to make things better with my husband, who still feels I am a shitty mother. Things are downhill, and I am in constant touch with my therapist, who helped me even before I gave birth. If I ever decide to get a divorce, that will bring another set of issues to deal with. He has shown no interest or concern about his own life, and I have learned recently from mutual sources that it has got to do with his ex-wife. It's too much to take for me, And I am just taking things one day at a time and focusing all my energy on looking after my newborn with my mom's help, of course.